Hello Zenith women and welcome to the channel. The rarest things in the world are often the most overlooked. It's a strange reality. People crave something unique, yet when they finally encounter it, they fail to recognize its value. This is exactly what happens with the Sigma female. She's not loud like the alphas, not predictable like the betas, and certainly not interested in playing by society's rules. So what happens? People underestimate her, ignore her, or worse, assume she's irrelevant. Big mistake. Here's a fact. Less than 1% of women embody the Sigma female archetype. That's rarer than finding an honest politician, a truly good sequel, or someone who actually reads the terms and conditions before clicking agree. But here's the kicker. While the world is busy sleeping on her, she's out there quietly winning, building, and evolving. And by the time people finally realize what they missed out on, it's already too late. Why do people overlook this powerhouse of a woman, even when it's their loss? Let's break it down, brutally, honestly, and with zero cliches. Number one, she wins without competing, and that's why they never see her coming. Most people spend their entire lives competing, fighting for attention, chasing status, trying to prove their worth. They measure success by how many people are watching, how much recognition they get, and whether they can outshine the next person. The Sigma female doesn't play that game. She doesn't need to. While everyone else is busy scrambling for validation, she's creating her own lane, focused on something much bigger than temporary wins. This is why people never see her coming. She doesn't announce her moves, doesn't broadcast her achievements, and doesn't waste time trying to impress the crowd. To outsiders, it might look like she's doing nothing, like she's irrelevant. But behind the scenes, she's building, strategizing, growing. By the time people finally realize what she's done, she's already miles ahead, too far for them to catch up. She doesn't operate from a place of insecurity, so she has no reason to prove herself to anyone. While others burn themselves out trying to be seen, she puts her energy into things that actually matter. She invests in her skills, her mindset, her future. No distractions, no need for applause, just results. And when those results finally show, people are left shocked, scrambling to understand how she got so far without them noticing. The truth is, most people are too focused on those who demand attention. They assume the loudest person in the room is the most powerful, the most visible one is the most successful. They don't realize that true power doesn't need an audience. The Sigma female moves in silence, and silence makes people uncomfortable. But by the time they wake up to her impact, it's already too late. She's already won. And the best part, she never even had to compete. Number two, she rejects society's must-do list, which makes people think she's lost. Society loves a script. Be born, go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, retire, and then finally live the life you actually wanted. Deviate from this timeline and suddenly people start asking questions. Why aren't you married yet? When are you having kids? Don't you want a real job? The Sigma female has heard it all, but she couldn't care less. She doesn't live by a checklist. She lives by her own rules. This confuses people. They assume she's lost, directionless, or worse, afraid of commitment. They don't understand that rejecting the traditional path isn't about rebellion, it's about freedom. The Sigma female doesn't follow society's timeline because it simply doesn't fit her. If she doesn't want to climb the corporate ladder, it's not because she's lazy, it's because she'd rather build something of her own. If she's not rushing into marriage and kids, it's not because she's incapable of love, it's because she values deep, meaningful connections over forced timelines. To outsiders, this looks like uncertainty. They mistake her independence for indecision, her self-sufficiency for loneliness. But while they're busy judging, she's busy creating a life that actually makes her happy. She doesn't need a ring to feel complete, a high-status job to feel successful, or a packed social calendar to feel important. She's comfortable in her own space, making choices that align with who she is, not what others expect. The irony, the same people who judge her will one day look at her life and wonder how she found peace while they spent years chasing expectations that never truly fulfilled them. They'll realize she was never lost. She was just ahead of her time. Number three, she's a mirror that exposes others' insecurities. People don't like being confronted with truths they're not ready to face. And the Sigma female has a way of doing exactly that without even trying. She doesn't follow the script, doesn't seek approval, and doesn't shrink herself to fit in. And because she refuses to conform, she becomes a mirror, exposing the insecurities of those around her. Instead of admitting that they feel threatened, people dismiss her as weird, too independent, or too different. It's easier to label her than to acknowledge the discomfort she stirs in them. She doesn't chase validation, which unsettles those who rely on external approval to feel worthy. She isn't afraid to walk alone, which makes people who fear solitude question their own dependence on others. She doesn't follow trends, which reminds people how much of their identity is based on what's popular rather than what's authentic. Every part of her existence forces people to reflect on themselves, and not everyone likes what they see. This is why people underestimate her, ridicule her, or even resent her. It's not because she's lacking in anything, it's because she highlights the gaps in others. A woman who doesn't seek permission makes those who constantly need it feel weak. A woman who isn't afraid of her own company reminds others of their fear of being alone. A woman who doesn't measure success by society's standards forces people to question whether they actually believe in the life they're living or if they're just following orders. But instead of taking this as a sign to grow, most people choose the easier path: denial. They call her arrogant instead of admitting they admire her confidence. They call her difficult instead of acknowledging that she refuses to be controlled. They call her too different because the thought of being that self-sufficient terrifies them. The Sigma female doesn't try to make people uncomfortable, it just happens. And the ones who reject her the most? They're often the ones who secretly wish they had the courage to be just like her. Number 4, she doesn't give people what they expect, so they dismiss her. People like to put others into boxes. It makes them easier to understand, easier to control. But the Sigma female refuses to be categorized. She's not the loud, dominant alpha, nor the agreeable, people-pleasing beta. She's something else entirely, and that confuses people. They expect her to behave a certain way, to follow the unspoken rules of social interaction, to fit into a label that makes sense, but she doesn't. And when people can't figure her out, they dismiss her instead. She doesn't play the social games that most people are used to. She won't fake enthusiasm just to make others comfortable. And she won't pretend to be interested in shallow conversations. She doesn't follow the standard script in relationships, friendships, or careers. She might be fiercely independent but deeply loyal. She might be reserved but intensely passionate about the things she cares about. She might appear detached, yet she notices everything. People struggle to reconcile these contradictions, and rather than taking the time to understand her, they simply label her as too complicated and move on. This unpredictability makes her an outlier. In friendships, people expect her to be emotionally available 24/7, but she values solitude. In relationships, they expect her to need constant reassurance, but she thrives on self-sufficiency. At work, they expect her to follow the hierarchy, but she operates on her own terms. She doesn't rebel for the sake of it. She simply doesn't see the point in following rules that don't align with her values. Because she doesn't fit neatly into expectations, people assume something must be wrong with her. They call her difficult, detached, or aloof, not realizing that she isn't confused about who she is. They are. The truth is, she doesn't exist to make people comfortable. And while they may dismiss her now, those who take the time to truly understand her always end up realizing what a rare force she really is. Number 5, she doesn't over-advertise herself, and that makes people ignore her. We live in a world where the loudest voices get the most attention. Social media is filled with people shouting about their achievements, over-exaggerating their importance, and desperately seeking validation. In this noisy environment, the Sigma female stands out, not because she's trying to, but because she refuses to play the game. She doesn't hype herself up, doesn't chase clout, and doesn't feel the need to constantly remind people of her worth. And because she doesn't demand attention, people assume she has nothing to offer. That's their mistake. The Sigma female operates on a different frequency. She doesn't feel the need to prove herself to anyone, which makes her easy to overlook at first. She doesn't flaunt her intelligence, but it's there. She doesn't broadcast her success, but she's winning in her own way. She doesn't waste time convincing people of her value because she knows that real worth isn't built on perception, it's built on substance. People are so conditioned to associate confidence with loudness that they don't recognize quiet strength when they see it. They assume that if she isn't constantly promoting herself, she must not be doing anything significant. But while they're busy performing for an audience, she's actually getting things done. She's learning, building, evolving without asking for applause. And when her success finally becomes undeniable, those who ignored her will be the first to ask, where did she come from? The irony is that the same people who overlooked her will eventually admire her. They'll wonder how they missed her presence, how they underestimated her abilities, and why she never needed external validation to thrive. The truth, she was always there, quietly working, unaffected by the noise. The world just wasn't paying attention. Number 6, she's intimidating without trying, which confuses people. Some people command attention by being the loudest in the room. They assert dominance through their words, their presence, and their need to be seen. The Sigma female doesn't do any of that, yet somehow people still feel her presence. There's something about her energy that's impossible to ignore, even if people can't quite explain why. She carries herself with a quiet confidence, a self-assuredness that doesn't require validation, and that unsettles people. She doesn't force herself into conversations, yet people notice when she speaks. She doesn't seek approval, yet people feel the weight of her disinterest. She doesn't try to intimidate, yet her very existence makes people question themselves. It's not arrogance, it's self-possession. She knows who she is, what she wants, and what she will and won't tolerate. In a world where most people are trying to fit in, her refusal to conform is intimidating, even if she's not trying to be. This confuses people. They're used to reading social cues, figuring out where someone stands based on their need for attention or validation. But the Sigma female gives them nothing to work with. She doesn't play power games, doesn't fake enthusiasm, doesn't engage in meaningless social climbing. She's just there, fully in control of herself, unshaken by external expectations. And when people can't figure her out, they react in 2 ways. They either dismiss her as unimportant or avoid her altogether. Some assume she's cold or detached because she doesn't engage the way they expect. Others pretend she's irrelevant because acknowledging her presence forces them to confront their own insecurities. But every now and then someone pays attention long enough to realize the truth. Her quiet confidence isn't just intimidating, it's rare. And while they were busy underestimating her, she was busy proving that true power doesn't need an audience. And number 7, she's a quiet genius, but people underestimate her intelligence. In a world where intelligence is often measured by how loudly someone talks or how many credentials they collect, the Sigma female flies under the radar. She doesn't feel the need to prove herself to anyone, and she certainly doesn't waste energy trying to impress people who wouldn't recognize her depth, even if she handed it to them on a silver platter. Because she isn't constantly broadcasting how smart she is, people assume she's just average, that is, until she opens her mouth. She's the type to sit quietly in a meeting, letting others dominate the conversation until she casually drops a solution that no one else even considered. She's the one who seems indifferent in a discussion, only to dismantle someone's weak argument with a single well-placed observation. She's not interested in debating for the sake of it, showing off or making others feel small. But when she does speak, people realize too late that they've underestimated her. The problem is, most people associate intelligence with performance. They expect the smartest person in the room to be the one who talks the most, asserts dominance, or constantly reminds others of their achievements. The Sigma female doesn't play into that nonsense. She doesn't need external validation to know she's intelligent. She absorbs information effortlessly, sees patterns others miss, and connects dots that don't seem related, yet she does it so quietly that no one notices until it's undeniable. And by the time they realize, she's already 5 steps ahead. Number 8, she's not impressed by status or titles, which annoys the egotistical. Most people are conditioned to respect power, not because it's earned, but because it's attached to a title. They see a CEO and instantly treat them with deference. They meet someone with wealth or fame and suddenly act as if that person's worth is greater than everyone else's. The Sigma female, she doesn't play that game. She sees past the labels, the status, the curated image. To her, a person's title means nothing if their character doesn't match it. This throws the egotistical off balance. They're used to automatic admiration, used to people catering to their status. But when they meet the Sigma female, something strange happens. She treats them like everyone else. No pedestal, no special treatment, just a neutral, level-headed interaction. And that unsettles them. It's not that she's disrespectful. She simply doesn't believe in worshipping people for superficial reasons. She'll give the same energy to a billionaire that she would to a janitor. If someone is kind, she'll treat them with kindness. If someone is arrogant, she won't entertain their nonsense, no matter how much power they hold. She evaluates people based on who they are, not what they own or what position they hold. This attitude irritates those who rely on their status to feel important. When their usual tricks, name-dropping, flaunting wealth, flexing authority, don't work on her, they don't know how to respond. Some try harder to impress her, desperate to earn the validation she so easily withholds. Others dismiss her entirely, writing her off as difficult or unimpressed simply because she won't feed their ego. But here's the thing, the truly powerful, the ones who don't need external validation, respect her for this. They recognize that her lack of blind admiration comes from strength, not ignorance. And while the insecure struggle with her presence, the truly self-assured find it refreshing. Number 9, she's a threat without trying to be. Most people are easy to manage. Give them a sense of belonging, dangle a little validation, and they'll fall in line. They crave approval, hierarchy, and a clear sense of who's in charge. But then there's the Sigma female, unattached, self-sufficient, and completely uninterested in playing by those rules. She doesn't need approval to function, doesn't seek leadership to feel secure, and certainly doesn't bend to authority just because she's expected to. And that makes her a threat. Not because she's trying to be one, but because people in power don't know what to do with someone they can't control. Weak leaders rely on obedience. Weak social circles depend on conformity. Weak individuals build their confidence by feeling superior to others. The Sigma female disrupts all of that simply by existing. She moves through life without needing permission, and that terrifies those who rely on social structures to feel important. She won't play along just to make someone feel powerful. She won't nod along just to keep the peace. She won't participate in pointless status games or pretend to be impressed by people who expect automatic respect. And that refusal to engage, it drives controlling people insane. They can't manipulate her with guilt, can't intimidate her into submission, and can't win her over with cheap flattery. She sees through all of it, and worse, she doesn't care, because she doesn't challenge power directly. People underestimate the threat she poses. She isn't out to destroy the system. She just refuses to let it define her. But that's exactly why she's dangerous. While others fight for control, she remains untouchable, making her the one thing the power-hungry fear the most, someone they can't influence, outmaneuver, or own. Number 10, she doesn't idolize traditional success, so people assume she's not successful. Society has a very specific idea of success. Flashy cars, high-status jobs, designer clothes, a picture-perfect lifestyle that looks good on the outside, whether it actually brings happiness or not. Most people chase these things because they've been taught that external validation equals achievement. But the Sigma female, she doesn't buy into that illusion. She measures success by freedom, fulfillment, and personal growth, not by how many people applaud her. And because she doesn't flaunt traditional markers of success, people assume she's not successful at all. They don't see her driving the latest luxury car or bragging about promotions, so they assume she's not doing enough. They don't see her desperate for attention or competing for recognition, so they assume she's not ambitious enough. But what they fail to realize is that while they're chasing status, she's creating actual success on her own terms. While others are stuck in jobs they hate just to impress people who don't care, she's quietly building something that gives her freedom. While others are drowning in debt to keep up appearances, she's stacking wealth without feeling the need to prove it. While others define themselves by titles and validation, she's defining herself by peace, purpose, and independence. The irony? The same people who look down on her unconventional choices are often the ones who years later look at her life and wonder how she became so free. By the time they realize she was never unsuccessful, just uninterested in meaningless success, she's already too far ahead for them to catch up. Number 11, she's misjudged as cold when she's just selective. Most people assume that being social means being available, constantly engaging in small talk, entertaining surface-level relationships, and always being on for others. The Sigma female doesn't operate that way. She's not cold, she's selective. She doesn't engage just for the sake of it, doesn't pretend to care when she doesn't, and doesn't waste energy on people who don't add value to her life. But because she isn't overly expressive or eager to please, people misjudge her. They call her cold, distant, or too serious, when in reality she just doesn't see the point in shallow interactions. She's not the type to force friendships, fake enthusiasm, or be emotionally available to everyone. She prefers quality over quantity, a concept that many people don't understand. In social settings, she's the one observing rather than fighting for attention. She listens more than she speaks, and when she does engage, it's because she wants to, not because she feels obligated. She's not interested in meaningless gossip, temporary friendships, or social climbing. She wants depth, conversations that stimulate her mind, relationships that hold real substance, and connections built on mutual respect, not convenience. This makes some people uncomfortable. They're used to quick validation, instant friendships, and forced politeness. But the Sigma female doesn't fake connections. If she vibes with you, you'll know. If she doesn't, she won't pretend. That level of honesty can feel unsettling to those who rely on superficiality to navigate social spaces. The truth is, she's not emotionless. She's just careful about who gets access to her emotions. She values deep, meaningful relationships over performative ones, and she refuses to water herself down just to fit in. And while some may misjudge her, those who truly know her understand that her loyalty, wisdom, and depth make her one of the rarest and most genuine people they'll ever meet. The Sigma female is a paradox, misunderstood, underestimated, and often dismissed, yet undeniably powerful. She doesn't conform, doesn't seek approval, and doesn't play by society's shallow rules. And because she refuses to fit into a mold, people struggle to define her. They mistake her independence for arrogance, her quietness for weakness, and her selectiveness for coldness. But the truth, she's simply operating on a different level, one that most people can't comprehend. She isn't here to impress, compete, or explain herself. While others are consumed by validation, status, and superficial connections, she's building something far more valuable, a life that's authentic, free, and entirely her own. And while people may ignore her now, underestimate her intelligence, or dismiss her choices, they always realize too late what they overlooked. By the time they finally understand her worth, she's already moved on, thriving in a world she built for herself, untouched by their judgments and unapologetically in control of her own destiny. If this breakdown of the Sigma female opened your eyes, challenged your thinking, or even made you question why society sleeps on such a rare personality, don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that values depth over noise. Like this video if you see the power in being underestimated. Comment below with your thoughts. Are you a Sigma female or do you know one? And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because while the world may overlook the Sigma female, this is a space where she's fully seen,